She smiled the way people do when they remember something they shouldn't. It wasn't wide or careless, just enough to make me forget what I'd meant to say. I used to think she was unshakable, the kind of person who could walk into any room and bend the air without meaning to. But that afternoon, she looked almost ordinary, sitting by the window with sunlight on her face, hair tied back, reading over a stack of essays she probably didn't even care about. Almost ordinary, until she looked up. "Still standing there?" she said softly, pen tapping against her lip. "You were always bad at entrances." It wasn't really a tease. More like a memory trying to sound casual. I laughed under my breath and sat across from her. The old classroom smelled faintly of chalk and rain, the windows half open, curtains fluttering. I could hear the clock tick in uneven rhythm. She'd been my teacher once, not for long, not in any way that would matter now. But seeing her again felt like opening a book you swore you'd finish years ago, only to find a page you'd never read. She watched me too long before looking down again. "You've changed," she murmured. "You haven't," I said, and immediately wished I hadn't. Her eyebrow lifted. "That's either kind or cruel, depending on the hour." We both laughed, but the sound didn't quite fill the space. Something hung between us, not wrong, not right, just there. The way light trembles before it fades. Her fingers brushed the paper, then stilled. "You didn't say why you came." "I don't really know." I glanced toward the window. "Maybe I wanted to see if you'd still smile the same way." Her breath caught, almost invisible, but I heard it. Or maybe I wanted to. There was a time I would have filled the silence, tried to explain myself out of it. But now, I just let it sit, heavy, alive. Her eyes stayed on mine, and for the first time, I couldn't tell if she was the one studying me, or if I was the one learning how to breathe again. "You shouldn't say things like that," she said finally, voice low. "Why not?" She looked away, a faint color rising to her cheeks. "Because some things sound truer than they should." Her pen rolled off the desk. We both reached for it. Her hand brushed against mine. Just skin. Just a second. But it felt like remembering warmth after forgetting what it was. Her pulse flickered beneath her wrist. I pretended not to notice, but she knew. "You always did ask the wrong questions," she whispered. "And you always refused to answer them." That made her smile again, that quiet, impossible smile. "Maybe some answers aren't meant to be said out loud." The air between us shifted, softer now, or maybe sharper. I couldn't tell. Her perfume lingered, something faint and unplaceable, like rain on an old book. She sat back, exhaling slowly, as if she'd remembered where she was. "Do you ever regret it?" I asked before I could stop myself. Her eyes met mine, still unreadable. "Which part?" Before she could say more, the door creaked open. A voice called from the hallway, another teacher, someone asking about a meeting. She turned toward the sound, then back to me. In that small turn, everything between us shifted again, what could be said, what never would. She stood, smoothing her skirt, composure slipping back into place. "You should go," she said gently. Then, after a pause, "Before I forget, I'm supposed to let you." She smiled once more, the kind that didn't reach her eyes, and I realized something I hadn't before. Maybe I was never here for answers. Maybe I was just another question she never stopped asking. The door closed. The clock kept ticking. And the silence she left behind was louder than anything she'd ever said. I hadn't planned to see her again. But a week later, I found myself outside her office anyway, pretending I'd stopped by to return a borrowed book. The truth sat heavier than the rain outside. She opened the door before I could knock. "You're early," she said, voice calm but eyes uncertain. "Or late. I can't tell which." Her hair was slightly undone this time, the kind of imperfection that felt deliberate. She stepped aside, letting me in. The room was smaller than I remembered, warmer too. Papers scattered across her desk, coffee gone cold. "I didn't know you still kept these," I said, noticing an old photo tucked under the glass, a classroom picture. "I was in it. Younger, unsure, looking everywhere but the camera. She followed my gaze, her smile flickering. You all grow up faster than I expect. Then one day, someone knocks on my door and I'm the one who doesn't know what to say. There was a pause, too long to be casual. I shouldn't have come, I said. Probably not, she murmured. Then quieter. But I'm glad you did. Her voice betrayed her, just slightly. Like a note held too long. I set the book down on her desk, fingertips brushing the edge of her hand. She didn't move, not right away. Her skin was warm, but there was restraint in the way she pulled back, not coldness, just control. People talk, she said suddenly, half smiling to herself. They always do. I don't care what they say. She looked up sharply. You should. Her tone carried something heavier than warning, guilt, maybe. Or memory. I wanted to ask what had happened before, what line she'd crossed once that made her afraid to cross another. But I stayed silent, because I could see it in her posture, the kind of stillness that comes from years of careful distance. I had someone once, she said finally, eyes fixed on the rain-streaked window. He was good to me. I wasn't good back. The words landed like a confession meant for no one. I wanted to tell her it didn't matter, that people change, that we're allowed to want again, but the truth was, I didn't know how to say that without sounding like a child trying to save someone older than the idea of saving itself. So instead I just said, You don't know him forever. Her eyes softened, and for a heartbeat, I thought she might reach for me. But she didn't. She only stepped closer, enough that her breath grazed my jaw when she spoke. Some debts aren't about owing, she whispered. They're about remembering not to repeat. Her hand hovered near mine again, almost touching, almost not. The silence between us was the kind that hurt a little, like standing too close to something you're not supposed to touch. Then she did something she hadn't before. She let her fingers rest, lightly, against my sleeve. Just a second. Just enough. Her voice trembled when she spoke. You should go before I start forgetting the rules. But she didn't move her hand. And I didn't either. The rain outside hit harder, like the world reminding us it still existed, but for a moment, it didn't matter. The air was too full of everything neither of us was ready to name. When I finally left, I could still feel where her fingers had been, a ghost of warmth that followed me all the way home. It started as another quiet afternoon. Her office again, same rain tapping against the glass, same scent of coffee and old paper. Only this time, something was different. She didn't ask why I'd come. I didn't pretend to have a reason. The air between us carried what neither of us had dared to name. Every word seemed too fragile to say aloud, every silence too loud to ignore. She stood near the shelf, flipping through a folder. You can't keep showing up like this, she said, not turning around. I know. Then why do you? I don't know. A pause. Then, quietly, That's not true. She finally looked at me. Her eyes had that same calm, unreadable surface, but underneath, I could feel the tremor. It lived in the way her breath shortened when I stepped closer, in the way her fingers tightened around the files she wasn't really reading. I shouldn't, she began. I know, I said again. She turned then, too quickly, and the folder slipped from her hands. Papers scattered to the floor, across the rug between us. We both bent down at once. Our hands brushed, then stayed there, either of us pulling away. For a second, everything stopped. The sound of rain blurred into nothing. My pulse filled the space where words should have been. Her voice was barely above a whisper. You have no idea how complicated this is. Then explain it to me. She didn't. She just looked at me, really looked, and for the first time, it felt like she wasn't trying to stop herself. Her hand rested on mine again, steady now. And then, a sharp knock at the door. We froze. Dr. Hale? A voice called. A man's, probably a colleague. You in there? She shot up, breath catching. Yes, she called, forcing calm. Just a minute. The look she gave me was half panic, half apology. I gathered the papers quickly, handing them to her. Her hands trembled as she took them. The voice outside lingered. "We have that department meeting at 4. I'll be there." Footsteps faded. Silence again. Her shoulders slumped. She exhaled shakily, setting the papers back down. "Do you see what I mean?" she said softly, almost pleading. "This, whatever this is, can't even exist in daylight." I didn't answer. I just stepped closer. Close enough to see the faint freckles along her neck, the way her pulse moved there. Quick, uncertain. "You think I haven't thought about it?" she whispered. "Every time you walk in, She stopped herself, biting the rest back. I reached out before I could stop myself, brushing a strand of hair from her face. She didn't move away. Her breath hitched. Her eyes closed just for a second, like she was caught between wanting to step forward and needing to run. "If I kiss you," I said quietly, "would you stop me?" Her eyes opened, glassy, unsteady. "I'd have to." But she didn't move. The clock ticked once, then again. Neither of us spoke. The space between us shrank until even breathing felt dangerous. Then she turned away, not fast, not final, just enough to remind us both that she still could. "Go," she whispered, "before I forget why I'm supposed to." But her hand stayed on the desk beside mine, close enough that the warmth still reached. Close enough to know the next time either of us would step back. The storm that night came without warning, a heavy, trembling kind of rain that blurred the windows and dimmed the whole building into shadow. Most of the staff had gone home hours ago. Her office was the only one still lit. When I walked in, she didn't look surprised. Just tired. Tired in a way that made her beauty feel more human, more dangerous. "You shouldn't be here," she said, not even turning from the window. "I couldn't stop thinking about you." Her reflection in the glass shifted, a small movement, almost a flinch. "You think that makes this easier?" "No," I said quietly. "It just makes it real." She turned then. The lamplight caught her hair, framing her face in gold. Her blouse sleeves were rolled up, ink stains on her wrist. She looked like someone who'd been fighting herself and losing. "I don't know what you want from me," she said. "I don't either. I just know I can't seem to want anything else." Her lips parted, not a smile, not denial. Just breath. I took a step closer, then another. The rain outside drowned out everything except the sound of our breathing. She shook her head. "You're too young to understand what this costs." "Then teach me," I said. Something broke in her expression, the faintest crack in composure. "Don't say that," she whispered. "You don't know what you're asking for." She backed up until her shoulders met the edge of her desk. I stopped just before her, close enough that I could see the tremor in her hands. My voice came out low. "Then tell me to leave." Her gaze lifted, meeting mine. "You wouldn't listen." "Probably not." For a long time, we didn't move. The air felt electric, too much gravity in too little space. She reached for something behind her, maybe an excuse, maybe a breath, but I caught her wrist gently. Her pulse thudded beneath my fingers. She didn't pull away. "You think this is about you," she said, voice trembling. "It's not. It's me. I'm the one who can't." Her words tangled into silence. I reached up, brushing a loose strand of hair from her face. Her eyes fluttered closed. My hand lingered there, her cheek warm beneath my fingertips. "Tell me to stop," I whispered. Her breath hitched. "I can't." The world outside vanished, just her, the rain, and the sound of something inevitable breaking open between us. She leaned forward without meaning to, forehead resting briefly against mine, her voice almost lost in the storm. "This can't happen," she said. "But it already is." Her lips were a breath away, close enough that every word brushed against mine. The seconds stretched, unbearable. And then, the sharp buzz of her phone on the desk. Both of us froze. She pulled back slowly, eyes wide, pulse racing. The screen lit up, a name, unreadable from where I stood. The spell shattered, but not completely. She looked at me once more, voice barely steady. If you stay one more second, I won't stop what happens next. I didn't move. Neither did she. And in that suspended breath, it was already too late. We both knew something had crossed a line it could never return from. The next morning, everything felt too bright, the kind of light that exposes what darkness helped you ignore. I hadn't seen her since the storm. No messages. No calls. Just silence. I told myself I wouldn't go back, that distance was the only way to breathe again. That lasted 2 days. When I finally walked into her office, she was already standing by the window, hands clasped, posture too still. You shouldn't be here, she said, same words, different weight. You didn't answer me, I said. She turned, eyes rimmed red, though her voice stayed steady. Because I didn't know how to. Something in her tone made me stop. What happened? She hesitated, fingers tightening around her wrist. Someone saw us. That night. The air between us dropped a degree. Who? She shook her head. It doesn't matter. Word travels faster than truth does. I had to explain myself. Explain what? That you were just visiting. For help. For advice. Her voice caught on the word just. I took a step closer. And did they believe you? Her laugh was small, bitter. They wanted to. I let them. I wanted to be angry, but her eyes were full of something worse than guilt, fear. Not of them. Of herself. Why didn't you tell me? Because it doesn't change anything, she said. We were always going to be found out, even if no one ever saw. I moved closer, close enough to smell the faint trace of her perfume again, that mix of ink, coffee, and something floral that didn't belong to anyone else. You think lying will make it easier? I said quietly. She looked up at me, and for the first time, there was no distance in her gaze. No, she whispered. It just makes it slower. I reached out, fingers brushing her arm. She trembled, not from fear, not entirely. I should have walked away the first time you came back, she said. But I didn't. I let it happen, every look, every silence, every time I didn't tell you to leave. Why? Her breath hitched. Because I wanted to see if you'd stay. The words hit harder than any confession could have. She stepped past me then, but the movement brought her too close. Her shoulder brushed against mine, her hand catching briefly on my sleeve. Neither of us moved. The moment stretched thin, trembling. People will talk, she murmured again. Let them. She turned halfway, eyes catching mine. You think that's bravery? No, I said. I think it's honesty. She stared at me, something fierce and fragile in her expression. Then she whispered, almost to herself. You don't understand. If I fall again, I don't get to start over. Her voice cracked on the last word. I didn't try to touch her, not this time. I just said, then don't fall alone. For a second, her hand lifted, as if she meant to reach for me. Then she stopped, fingers curling into her palm. Come tomorrow, she said quietly. If you still mean that. And then she walked past me, leaving the faintest trace of warmth in the air, and a question that burned long after the door closed. Was she asking me to stay, or daring me to? The next evening, I found her classroom dark except for the single lamp by her desk. The blinds were drawn. The rain had stopped, but the air still held that damp, electric quiet, like the world was waiting to exhale. She looked up when I entered, expression unreadable. You came. You asked me to. I wasn't sure you would. I closed the door behind me. The sound felt final. For a long moment neither of us spoke. The silence wasn't comfortable anymore. It was alive, moving between us like heat. She leaned back against the desk, arms folded, eyes tracing the floor before finding mine again. Do you know what this means if we don't stop? She asked. Yes. And you still came? I couldn't not. She smiled, small, exhausted, but real. You make it sound simple. It's never been simple. Her laugh was soft, almost breaking. No. It hasn't. I took a step closer, then another. She didn't move. The air thickened, not from fear, but from everything we'd been holding back. My heart thudded so loudly I was sure she could hear it. I kept thinking it would fade, she said. That if I ignored it long enough, it would go away. Did it? Her eyes met mine. No. It just found new places to hide. She pushed away from the desk, moving toward me slowly, each step deliberate, quiet. When she stopped, we were close enough that her breath brushed against my collar. I've been careful my whole life, she whispered. Careful about what I say, what I feel, who I let close. And then you walked back in, and suddenly. Her voice faltered. I finished the sentence for her. Suddenly careful didn't work anymore. She exhaled shakily, eyes searching mine. You don't understand how long I've been lonely. I do, I said. Because I've been waiting just as long. Something inside her gave way then. I could see it in the way her shoulders softened, the way her hands stopped trembling. I lifted my hand, brushing her hair back behind her ear. She didn't flinch. Her eyes fluttered closed at the touch. The world outside fell away. No rain, no clocks, no reason left. This isn't supposed to happen, she murmured. It already is. She opened her eyes again, full of everything she tried to hide, longing, fear, the ache of being seen. When she spoke next, it wasn't a confession. It was a choice. Then don't stop. And I didn't. No one spoke. No one needed to. The distance between us disappeared, not with a rush, but with quiet certainty. The air filled with warmth, the tremor of two people finally admitting what silence had been saying for them all along. When she finally stepped back, her eyes were wet, but her smile was steady. This will cost us, she said softly. I know. But for once, she whispered, I don't care. We stood there, the world outside forgotten, understanding each other completely for the first time, not through words, not through restraint, but through the fragile, reckless truth that had always been waiting between us. And in that understanding, something unspoken finally settled, not peace, not regret, but the simple, human relief of no longer pretending. The world didn't end the next morning. The sun rose, slow and unbothered, like it hadn't watched two people cross every line they'd sworn they never would. She was sitting by the window again, same chair, same soft light, but her shoulders looked lighter somehow. There was no more pretending between us. Just quiet. When I walked in, she didn't look away this time. You're early, she said, that small, familiar smile tugging at her lips. I didn't sleep much. Neither did I. I hesitated near the doorway, unsure of what we were now, too close for distance, too new for comfort. But she reached out her hand, a simple gesture that felt like permission. I took it. Her fingers were warm, steady. She didn't pull away. I thought I'd regret this, she said softly. I don't. I sat beside her. Me either. Outside, the trees swayed gently in the morning breeze, the world carrying on as though nothing extraordinary had happened. Inside, everything had. She turned toward me, studying my face as though trying to memorize it. You know what I was most afraid of? She asked. What? That this would make me feel small again. Foolish. But it didn't. It made me remember I'm still alive. There was no way to respond that didn't sound too small for what she just said, so I didn't try. Instead, I leaned forward and rested my forehead against hers. She closed her eyes, breathing in slowly, like she'd been holding her breath for years. We stayed like that, no words, no promises. Just the quiet sound of two people realizing the world hadn't given them permission, but they'd chosen anyway. When she finally spoke, her voice was a whisper. Do you think this can last? I thought about it. About the stares, the questions, the way the world would make stories out of us before we ever got to write our own. I don't know, I said. But I think it's worth finding out. Her eyes softened, and she smiled, the kind of smile that didn't need to hide anymore. She leaned in, her hand finding mine again. Our fingers intertwined naturally, like they'd been waiting to do that all along. It's strange, she murmured. I spent so long teaching other people how to find their voices. And now it's you who reminds me what mine sounds like. I kissed her forehead, gentle, certain. Then don't lose it again. For a long while, we sat in silence. The sunlight crept further into the room, painting everything in warmth, the books, the papers, the 2 cups of untouched coffee. No more running, no more pretending. Just a quiet understanding that sometimes, what breaks the rules also heals what's been broken inside you. When I finally stood to leave, she didn't ask me to go. She just said, "Come back tomorrow." And I knew I would. Because for the first time, tomorrow didn't feel like a question. It felt like an answer.